Hi everyone. Today we're looking at an absolute classic of 1960s camera design and something that pretty much everyone's grandmother, grandfather, auntie, uncle, mum and dad would have shot in the 1960s to the 1980s. This is the famous Olympus Trip 35. So this cult compact camera was first released in 1967. It was one of the first full-frame 35mm compacts made by Olympus, one of the big camera companies of the time. It was a runaway success because Olympus had come up with a combination of pragmatic camera design and marketing nous. You were left in no confusion over what this camera was for. It had Trip in the name. This was a holiday camera, the kind of thing you could take to the beach or a weekend away and be pretty much certain you were going to get decent photos without having to do a photography course beforehand. So with the Trip 35, simplicity really is the key. There's no sort of fussy focusing aids. You focus this camera by choosing one of several zones that represent a certain distance from the camera. Everything from about a meter away for taking a portrait through to infinity, which is for landscapes. That's illustrated with a little picture of a tiny orange mountain. It's not just the focusing that's simple with this camera, it's actually taking a picture. Because you put it on A for automatic, and the camera will choose exactly which aperture it needs. And it will also choose either one of two shutter speeds. So the Trip can either shoot at 1/200th of a second, or it can shoot at 1/40th, and it will choose whichever aperture gives the best exposure for those two shutter speeds. If the light's too low, or indeed too bright, then a little red flag comes up in the viewfinder as you're looking through it, and the camera won't actually allow you to take a picture. But basically you can also override that and choose your desired aperture. When you do that, the camera will shoot at 1/40th of a second. Now what's nice about that is that corresponds exactly with the focal lens of the Trip 35. It has a 40mm f2.8 lens. So that means no camera shake. There's a basic rule where if you want to ensure that your shots don't have camera shake, you try and keep the shutter speed equal or greater, i.e. faster, than your focal length. It's possible to, say it's twilight, pop it off A to 2.8, the camera will choose 1/40th of a second, and while you might not get the exposure you want, at least you won't be getting camera shake. The 40mm f2.8 lens is absolutely beautiful. It's really, really sharp, amazing color rendition with even cheap color films, the kind of thing that you might buy on the airport on the way to your holiday destination. And 40mm is a sort of sweet spot in between wide angle and the sort of standard 50mm lens with 35mm cameras. You don't see it often in the sort of range of SLR lenses. They tend to go sort of 35mm to 50mm, but you see it a lot in these sort of small compacts or compact rangefinders from the 60s and 70s. And it's that sweet spot in between a wide angle and a standard lens viewpoint. So this is a great summer day camera, bright weather camera. Another great thing about this camera, and which makes the fact it was built until the mid-1980s quite surprising, is it doesn't need batteries. This automatic function is powered by this array of selenium cells which power the meter. And you don't need batteries for those. They work off sunshine or bright light. So that made it an even more appealing camera to sort of take away with you, because certainly back in the 70s or 80s, where you might be going to places that didn't stock all the batteries needed for cameras, it's kind of a nice feature. You can just pop the Trip 35 in your pocket or in your backpack and off you go. Another good thing about the Trip is it's mostly metal, apart from the sort of plasticky vinyl covering. The Trip 35 is pretty much an all metal beast, and that helps, it takes the knocks. You can still find Trip 35s in working condition almost anywhere, you know, camera shops, flea markets, antique stores, because so many of these were made, 10 million plus. It's not hard to find one in working condition. Spare parts aren't really an issue, and even if there's something wrong with them, they're not that complicated a camera, so it's pretty easy for a repairer to bring them back into working condition. What are the drawbacks of using the Trip 35? Well, you need to be reasonably confident in your ability to measure where things are, because as I said earlier, you don't have a focusing aid other than the symbols which tell you something's a meter or 3 meters away. So it's worth practicing, and be aware that your focus might be out on those first few rolls if you haven't tried this technique before. The ISO in early cameras it only went up to 200. In later ones like the one I have here, it only goes up to 400. So this really is a sort of good weather outdoor light camera. It's not really the thing you want to be taking to try and come up with low light pictures on the streets of Paris at 3 a.m. But you know, that's fair enough. That wasn't the job that the Trip was intended for. If you wanted to take a no-nonsense, sort of robust compact camera with you on your summer holidays, there's a reason why 10 million of these were made. So that's the Olympus Trip 35, the Kodak Brownie of the 1970s. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, and we'll be bringing you more reviews of weird and wonderful cameras.